Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Royal Blue podcast on this Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock. We are live on YouTube and Facebook. I am your host, Ian Croll, and I'm joined by the Echo's Everton FC reporter, Chris Beesley. Chris, how are things? Still got a bit of a sour taste in the mouth following Everton's 3-1 defeat to West Ham on Saturday?
Yeah, I think we've all got that one. That one's going to linger for a while, hasn't it? But we're just kind of gearing up now for what will be Everton's last game for 3 weeks, won't we? We'll be wondering what we're going to do with ourselves the rest of this month.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, isn't it? There probably won't be much match day content to speak about following the United game, but I'm sure there will be plenty of content to speak about regarding Everton and the takeover and the second charge of, a potential point deduction as well. But the agenda today, for those watching live on YouTube and Facebook, me and Chris thought it'd be a good idea just to have a little chat about the Everton takeover and the latest on 777. And we know our colleague Joe Thomas wrote a really good piece, a special report, which you can read on the Echo website, all about the latest on 777. It's a really good read. I'd recommend you go and find it. It's on all of our social channels, Twitter, Facebook, and you can also get it on the Echo website, as previously mentioned. Joe is off today, Chris, so me and you just decided we're not in the office, we're not in the studio today, so we are doing a remote pod, but we thought we'd best to bring the content. Just a reminder, people, please subscribe, show us support, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also give us a like and a follow and a share on Facebook. So, Chris, the latest on 777 is that Premier League officials are set for face-to-face talks. We don't know when it's going to be, but the reports have suggested that it could be soon, and we're hoping for a breakthrough. Obviously, it's from my point of view, what do you think? It's a step in the right direction?
I mean, it has to be, doesn't it? Because whether you're for or against this, and I mean, a lot of people probably somewhere in between, because we don't know the full details of what's going on there. There has to be a finish at some point. When the deal was announced mid-September, wasn't it? It was said that 777 partners, of course, had agreed the deal to buy Farhad Moshiri's controlling 94.1% stake in Everton in full, and they were hopeful of getting a decision by the fourth quarter of the year, i.e. the turn of the calendar year. I mean, way beyond that now. The whole of January, we've had the whole of February, here we are in March now. And it's not been decided one way or the other. In that meantime, I think 777 have handed over significant amounts of money in terms of loans to Everton. They've been a visible presence at matches, mostly with the top man, Josh Wonder. He's been there. He's been, to be fair, whatever his motives are, he's been there far more regularly than Farhad Moshiri was for the past couple of years. And obviously Moshiri remains, as we speak, the majority shareholder of the club. So certainly they've made all the right noises and seem to be doing the right thing. But yet all those question marks remain about them, and the fact that Premier League is still not given approval for them, it has to be a concern that it's taken so long. But like you say, I mean, it has to be decided one way or the other. It was just interesting if you do read Joe's piece, and I would I'd encourage all of our listeners and viewers to do that, give them some great insight on what is a very complicated issue, like unfortunately a lot of things are at Everton at the moment. Joe says that this meeting between 777 and the Premier League is not expected to bring an immediate decision. So it's not like, they'll bang a few heads together and it's going one way or the other. I mean, this may not actually be the end, but the fact that they are supposedly meeting face to face to thrash this out, I mean, it has to be positive in terms of reaching the end game one way or the other.
I was going to ask you this actually, Chris, towards the end of the pod, but I'll ask you this now because you've kind of touched upon it. So Josh Wonder, he's obviously had a presence at Goodison Park over the past couple of months, since the news broke that a deal had been agreed. You obviously made the comparison there to Farhad Moshiri, who I think has been to Goodison Park, I think once in the past 22 months. Is is this a tactic from the co-founder of 777 to say it's a show of solidarity, a show of unity, and that they are the right people for the job?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're going to be throwing that much money at something, you do want to be seen to be there. I mean, one of the tough things for 777 is obviously they already have a portfolio of clubs all around the world anyway. I believe one of the prerequisites when they do go sounding out these clubs, obviously they're known for taking on teams as sort of historic teams with big fan bases, but ones who've fallen on hard times, and Everton seem to tick all the boxes in that respect. But also having an airport in close proximity, they've got ties to the aviation industry, and obviously they like to get in and out of these places easier. And that's another thing, isn't it? Because they've got teams obviously across Europe, Genoa in Italy, Standard Liège, Belgium, Hertha Berlin, Germany, Red Star in Paris, France, even minority stake in Sevilla as well. And then obviously there's a far-flung ones like Vasco da Gama in Brazil, and is it Melbourne Victory in Australia. So they've got this worldwide portfolio of clubs. So it's not like Everton are their only team, and obviously they haven't gained approval for Everton, but if they were to do, they've already got all these other teams that they own already around the world. So the fact that he's been to Everton so many times compared to Farhad Moshiri, who's only got Everton and is the incumbent owner. I mean, like you say, he was there for the Burnley Carabao Cup game because that was when Goodison paid its tribute to Bill Kenwright. I think it would have been pretty off if he'd not shown his face for that one. Obviously, he was there, not at Goodison, but at the London Stadium for the game, the West Ham game, before he sacked Lampard, and then he was, trying to think when he was there again this season as well. So he's probably been more times to away games, but yeah, either home or away. Because to be fair, 777 haven't just been to Goodison; they've been to the Everton games a lot this season, particularly Josh Wanda. And there was that time, I think it was the Crystal Palace FA Cup replay, when there was about 6 of them turned up en masse. They'd had a trip down to the new stadium site at Bramley-Moore Dock earlier in the day, fact-finding mission on that one to check on progress. They've also been to away games as well, down at Fulham around that time as well, end of January. Wanda was there with Don Dransfield and the guy from the analytics, Mladen as well, Shorbitz, who's now gone to Barnsley. So yeah, they've certainly been making their presence seen and heard. And like you say, is this to show that they're dedicated? Is it trying to force the issue? It's certainly, it's for whatever you think about them, good or bad. I think the fact that they are turning up at matches has to be a good thing, rather than someone like Moshiri, who's become increasingly an absentee landlord, and that not only is he either can't or won't fund the club in the manner he's done in the past. He's hardly been at Goodison since that 5-2 capitulation against Watford under Rafael Benitez.
We're getting a couple of comments coming in, Chris. So the Everton Fan Advisory Board on YouTube, so I think it's their official YouTube accounts, have said, "Afternoon all, Pablo here." They've also said, "Thanks to Joe for the 777 article and asking the opinion of the Fan Advisory Board." I think from what I read in that piece that the Fan Advisory Boards have actually submitted a number of questions to 777, but without reply yet. So, it would be interesting to see if, they did get a reply, in an open forum where Everton fans could fully understand what, their intentions are of the club. But I suppose, that's probably not going to happen until any takeover, is complete, is it? Yeah,
I mean, it's frustrating for the FAB, and also Pablo. He's someone we met at a recent meeting, Joe and myself, when actually the points deduction was being discussed, when Steve Rotherham and Andy Burnham were there. But yeah, they submitted those questions, I think, right back in September, I believe, when the deal was first announced. I think there was 14 questions submitted to 777, and yeah, like you say, they're still waiting on answers for those ones, and it's concerning. And I think the FAB also spoke out recently about the uncertainty around all the fact that, like you say, one way or the other, this hasn't been sorted with the club, and how it's dragging on. I think they're pretty legitimate questions to be asked. But I mean, I think 777 have perhaps hidden under this sort of idea that, oh, we wouldn't want to be sort of colouring events as this process is continuing and while it's an ongoing thing. But yeah, there's going to be lots of legitimate questions are being asked of this organisation, and the fact that it's just taken so long anyway, like we're saying, going all the way back to mid-September when the deal was announced, and the hopes from the parties involved that it would be all sorted by the end of the year, and the fact that it is dragging on. Obviously, Jim Radcliffe at Manchester United got approved a lot quicker. His was only a minority stake. It wasn't a complete takeover of the club, so it is different in that respect, but it just shows you how quickly these things can be done if the Premier League is satisfied with the parties involved, and those questions remain unanswered, both for the FAB, the Everton Fan Advisory Board, and indeed most crucially of all, the Premier League themselves.
I mean, whatever way you look at it, Chris, our thoughts on the Premier League, or the fans' thoughts on the Premier League, the Premier League clearly aren't satisfied with 777 and the process and everything that, supposedly that 777 have answered. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we've stated already, reports this week, that they're going to sit down and have face-to-face talks, which is obviously a good thing. Mm-hmm. But it did seem at one point that there was a breakdown in communication between both parties. There was suggestions that 777 had submitted everything that the Premier League asked for. The Premier League had basically denied that wasn't the case. So, it's obviously not a good look for either side, because somewhere in between, someone's not telling the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar, isn't it, to the whole Everton points deduction thing? I think Joe wrote that there wasn't any winners in any of that, and that's probably the case, in that neither side of it has come out of it looking great, really, from the Everton point of view, how the club has been run and the great losses that have been incurred, and then the Premier League for the way that they sort of handled the whole process. And obviously that went to the appeal board, and they got 4 out of 10 points back. But similarly with this as well, again with the Premier League holding Everton's destiny is in their hands to a great extent. It seems that they're obviously not satisfied. I mean, obviously we're not privy to all the details that go on and what's been said and what's been submitted and what hasn't and what's been asked for as such. But I think given the types of takeovers that we've seen in recent years, I mean, notably with Newcastle United and the sovereign wealth fund of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, there's been an appetite to make sure that the right people come in, and the people who aren't deemed to be the right people aren't let in when it comes to the takeover of Premier League clubs. And it is a very sort of diligent process. And I think even Richard Masters, who obviously is a certain notoriety in Evertonians, given what he said in terms of the points deduction, he's also spoken on this issue and the fact that it's dragged on, and obviously there are questions that remained unanswered from the Premier League's point of view for 777. Yeah, it's a very frustrating process, I think, for everyone involved. But whatever we think of the Premier League, they want to get this one right. They don't want to be seen as letting somebody in who they don't think is fit and proper. And if they have got questions that need answering, well, 777 will have to come up with the answers. But yeah, it's gone on, and I think that everyone is just seeking clarity on this issue for whatever is best for Everton. I mean, part of the problem you've got, as I mentioned before, is that I understand that in various loans and overpayments, or 777 have already put in something in the tune of around £200 million, perhaps, towards Everton, and it's very difficult once they've done that. I mean, how that all unravels if they weren't to actually get the approval for the takeover. I mean, it's been something that's been mentioned by other outlets, this idea that by putting this money in, it makes it more difficult for rival parties to other potential takeovers to take place. Because I remember going back to what Neville Southall said back in the autumn about the time when it sort of first all emerged. And I thought that Nev spoke very clearly, really, when he was saying about he just doesn't understand why there weren't more interested parties. He thought, obviously the new stadium needs funding, but with that on the horizon and all that would bring, that Everton would actually be a very lucrative proposition for potential investors. He was just surprised that there weren't more people queuing up, and I think it was his words, to buy Everton. And it is curious, really. Obviously, we had the business with the other American investors last summer that looked like they were going to come in all summer. We were told to wait, and it was going to happen. It didn't. Something changed with them and Farhad Moshiri, and then all of a sudden, 777 emerged. But yeah, it's not a satisfactory situation for anyone involved.
The reason I kind of brought up the breakdown in communication, Chris, is because do you think it's had an impact and the instability of everything that's gone on with the takeover? Has that filtered down onto the pitch and affected results? Because we know Dyche has openly admitted that the points deduction process and the appeal process with regards to that has had some impact on the pitch, and we know the results have not been good. Or is that an easy cop out for Dyche and the players? Do you think they've actually been affected by this takeover talk?
He would say not, and I think he has done when he's been asked about that. He says from his point of view it hasn't done. I think unless that you were in a position where the players weren't getting paid or something like that, I don't think it would filter down to the team as much. I think that the points deduction certainly would do a lot more. That's immediate. They won those 10 points themselves on the pitch, and those players, the same way as the fans, were being punished for something that wasn't anything to do with them. It wasn't their fault. So you could see where it's quite natural sort of human reaction that the points deduction would potentially have an adverse effect. But in terms of this sort of bubbling away in the background, I mean, you can't quantify these things, but I don't think it would have a significant effect on the players. Like I said, it would only be if for whatever reason they weren't getting their wages in their pockets at the end of every month, or however you pay Premier League footballers. I don't think it's going to adversely affect them. I mean, it might do if you get to like the summertime and obviously the situations still wasn't resolved one way or another. Well, then you would be thinking about how's that going to affect players, because are people going to want to move on, or are going to be sort of more susceptible to bids coming in if the ownership issue isn't resolved? But at the moment, and obviously the transfer window's closed as well, I wouldn't cite that as a particularly significant play. I mean, who knows? Every individual's different, but I wouldn't imagine that would be a big thing for the players, and certainly I'd be disappointed if they weren't playing to their full potential because of this. But I think for the fans, though, it's a huge thing. I think a lot of people have actually said to me that who are Evertonians that in many ways this is actually bigger than the whole points deduction thing, because as bad as that is, and certainly on a short-term level, how much that affects Everton, this goes beyond all this, because we're talking about the custodians of the club. But I know it is a crucial time for the club as well in terms of the building of the new stadium. So yeah, not so much with the players, but you can understand why it's such a burning issue for the Evertonians themselves, who have obviously been through so much heartache and continue to be over these last couple of years. It really has been the most the toughest time ever, I think, for the fan base. I mean, I've lived through last day relegation escapes myself. I was there Wimbledon '94 against Coventry City in '98. You know, they were dire moments, they were nervy moments, but I think never has there been the sort of feeling of sort of despair and frustration of the whole way that things are going at the club. I mean, let's remind ourselves, like I said, with the stadium, this is a time when Evertonians should be joyous in many ways. Looking fondly back on Goodison Park for it's like going into its last season next year. You know, the first purpose-built football ground in the country, the ground which has staged more top-flight matches than any other, and then looking forward to that move to the great new stadium on the banks of the Mersey. You know, it's just a once in a lifetime moment for Evertonians, but instead they're left concerned about their Premier League status and concerned about just who's going to be running the club.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, since this deal was agreed, there's been question marks over 777's intentions of buying Everton Football Club, question marks over the reputation, you know, question marks even on how they can afford to buy Everton Football Club and, you know, be able to, you know, fund Everton Football Club. And there was reports this week, I'm not sure if you read the article, I think I read it yesterday, from sources at a Norwegian publication website, Jossima, I think it's called, you know, suggested that the company basically owed over $3 billion to creditors, and that was from the summer of 2023. Now, you know, I'm not going to go into all that because we don't know, you know, the ins and outs of it all. But these are obviously legitimate concerns that Everton fans are, you know, are going to be faced with if to be true and 777 do take over the club, because we know that they already own a number of football clubs where, you know, things aren't particularly going great, which I'll come on to in the next couple of questions. But, you know, how do we get around this? And, you know, really, are they even the right fit for Everton Football Club?
Yeah, as Joe mentions in his piece, the likes of Josimar and Semaphore produced some really investigative pieces on 777. It's an ongoing issue. Like I said, maybe Dave Powell, our football finance guy, might be better to sort of delve into the money issues and all of that side of things. But yeah, they say the teams that they've got into, they're certainly not known for throwing their money about. Where they've sort of have spent their money is in sort of consolidating the clubs as institutions, in that trying to keep them afloat off the field and sort of keep the houses in order in that respect. But they're not the sort, you know, they're not going to come in like Todd Bowley at Chelsea and splash the cash or anything like that. That's certainly not the case. And then there's been concerns over that the money that they spent or not spent at these other teams. And what you're going to have with Everton is that in terms of, because Everton are playing in the Premier League, the richest league in club division, domestic division in world football, you obviously need the biggest budget of all. So if you're struggling to sort of put the money in at Standard Liège or even Genoa and Serie A, obviously they had a big sale to Tottenham in January. I mean, who's to say that they're going to be sort of funding Everton transfers? I mean, Everton have seen already, that's not always the way to success. Unfortunately, probably no club in world football has spent more to get as bad as Everton under Farhad Moshiri. You know, the admissions that the one-to-way majority shareholder has said himself, that you know, they've not always spent large amounts of money wisely. I mean, that's an understatement if ever there was one. But yeah, there's going to be concerns about where the money is coming from, if the money is there, and just how much of it there would be. It's almost like Evertonians are caught between a rock and a hard place. I think it feels like for a lot of them, and it's gone so badly wrong under Farhad Moshiri, just squandering millions and millions of pounds and having huge losses. And then you got a new prospective set of owners who've got major question marks over them. I mean, not necessarily in the same areas, it's a very different approach. But yeah, it's not like wave a magic wand and everything will be okay. That, I mean, they've had to fight lots of publicity battles where they've been questioned from all sorts of angles, like you say, in terms of where the money is coming from and whether they have enough. I think Joe mentions in his piece about credit ratings and things like that. I mean, I'm supposed to be a football reporter, but yeah, it's not a good look, and it does, you know, justifiably leaves people with a lot of fears really about whether they are the right people for Everton, because we were being told all of last summer that the other Americans, they were the right people, and to be fair to them, they were sort of proven sports administrators from the US. I mean, their track records, both I think in the NBA basketball and Major League Baseball, was all pretty solid. Certainly a lot more long established than 777, who are very much the new kids on the block. as it were. And it's interesting, just at the end of Joe's piece, towards the end, he mentions that he understands there is genuine alternative interest in Everton from the USA, but whether that ever comes to the surface or not, obviously, like we've mentioned, the way that 777 have sort of muddied the waters already in terms of allowing other potential investors to come in by already giving loans to the club. I mean, you just don't know just how straightforward it would be if they did pull out or they weren't given approval and somebody else tried to come in.
Getting a couple of questions then on, there's meant to be another consortium waiting in the wings, American-based. Just remind me, this isn't the same, as far as we know, this isn't the same consortium that originally had, came very close to an agreement with Farhad Moshiri. Or am I
that hasn't been disclosed by Joe. I would imagine not, given that all that went on, given that that they were in pole position, they had the period of exclusivity last summer, and then that all fell through. So I would imagine not, but that doesn't say either way in that respect.
Okay, well, I mean, a little bit of case for defence for 777 based on a couple of articles that I've read. This is basically their case for defence. It's not me defending them, just in case anyone starts submitting comments. The group have put much of the problems, to existing teams that they own, basically down to, before they got there. So problems that were there before they, acquired those football clubs. And there was a couple of lines and pieces that I read over the past couple of weeks, with regards to administrative errors, with financing and loans and stuff like that. So is that a case for defence, or is it not?
Yeah, it's to be fair to them, like you say, that they have come into teams who have been struggling. Both Vasco da Gama in Brazil and Genoa in Italy both had to go down. Then they came back up again. Hertha Berlin went down, although I think they were already sort of on the way out before 777 came in there in the second tier in Germany now as well. So they have things have had to go backwards before they get forwards. I mean, that would be potentially disastrous in Everton's case, for Everton to drop into the Championship. And certainly, if it's talking about going into Goodison Park's final season, I've already mentioned. They've had tough situations which they've come into, and I think that's part of the appeal. And maybe that's the wrong word, but when they look at these potential teams who they can purchase, they perhaps think that the ones who are down on their luck or haven't been run to full capacity or in a good way would be the ones that they can take on, because I guess they get them for a cheaper price, and there's more scope for improvement there. They feel that they can run the teams better and maybe have their shared resources brought from the global network there, because I know from certainly on the analytics side of things, it's all very much joined together, across the 777 network, with, say the smallest club in the group, Red Star in Paris, getting the same sort of access to information that like the big boys would get. So it is a legitimate defence. I would say that they have come into troubled outfits, and Everton, would certainly fit the bill in that respect. So it's not like they've come in and were firing on all cylinders. That doesn't seem to be the way they operate. They come into these troubled outfits, but ones who, like I say, seem to have sort of traditions of success in the past and have got large established fan bases. Because I think part of the 777 model is the idea that you get the fan base sort of purchase your products. Really, that's been certainly an issue, I think, one way or the other, in the teams they've had already. It provide the various branded products, and if you've got a big fan base there, the idea is that you've got more potential customers.
Okay, well, we'll finish off soon, Chris, but I just kind of wanted to also touch on Moshiri and where he stands in this, because obviously he's not providing any communication whatsoever, and he very rarely communicated with the Everton fans anyway when he was officially in charge, still in charge, I suppose. But where does he fit in this? Because he's stuck between a rock and a hard place if this 777 deal does not go through, does it? Because you would have to think that he has to find another consortium, whether it's this unknown American one, or he has to go back to funding the club. There's only two other options, because I think we've talked about this in the past. Surely he would not let the club run itself into administration, because then he would just lose out on all of the money that he's invested in the club over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, he's already lost a whole lot of money that he's not going to get back. But yeah, it's not in his interest, is it, for sort of abandon Everton and just leave them on the brink, as it were, because he gets absolutely nothing then. He's already going to make, a huge loss on this operation. There's loss in so many ways, and it's going to be a huge loss financially for him. He's squandered millions and millions of pounds. His aspirations of being a successful owner and getting Everton sort of smash through that glass ceiling and compete against the Premier League's established elite, that's just gone absolutely backwards. So the whole thing has just been a disaster from his point of view. I mean, the only thing he has got, obviously, the one big tick, is the way that the stadium. He is the man who has made Everton's new stadium dream, which has sort of been talked of seriously on and off for about 30 years now. He's the man who brought that to fruition. See, there's been aborted attempts before. Peter Johnson was the first one to sort of seriously attempt it. There's aspirations for what would have been, I think, possibly the biggest stadium in the Premier League at the time, but obviously nobody knew where that was going to be, whether it was going to be Kirkby Golf Club or some other unknown destination. Obviously, then there was the other destination, Kirkby. In between all of that, we have then the other Riverside proposition down at King's Dock. So, the one thing Moshiri has got is that he's made the stadium dream into reality. But other than that, when we're talking about on the field events, it's just been it's been a fiasco, really. 8 managers in as many years, and is it any surprise, really? But it's been that awful downward spiral. But for all of that, and he has been unfortunate in terms of obviously the timing. There was COVID, and then there was the war in Ukraine with the invasion there. So that obviously pulled the plug on any more potential investments from Mr. Usmanov, who's he's had to sever his long-standing business ties with. I mean, it's gotten like the opposite of the Midas touch, really. So he want to salvage whatever he can from sort of like the burning embers of this mess. So yeah, it's not in his interest to let Everton drift any more than they are. They're already on the brink in terms of the nearer misses from what will be the club's first relegation over 70 years in previous seasons, and this, not out of the woods yet, as we discussed in the podcast earlier this week, following the defeat to West Ham United. So yeah, it's a tough position for him, but and unfortunately he's had to reap what he sowed, really, for all those bad decisions that he's made in terms of both on the field and off the field decisions in during his tenure. And Michael Ball was talking about this in his Echo column last week, when he was saying, only Everton could get done for a financial charge with a billionaire accountant as their owner. But yeah, look what's happening now in terms of the takeover. It's just dragged on, and will it be a good deal for Mr. Moshiri? I don't know what sort of numbers he's going to be getting even with this deal, and if Swan falls through, I mean, where does he turn to then? He's not in a great place, is he?
I mean, one for just probably further down the line when a takeover does, end up being completed, Chris. But it'd be an interesting dynamic. But would Shawn Dyche find himself in a bit of a vulnerable position? When these owners come in and take over clubs, they like to bring their own man in. I suppose if Shawn Dyche wins football matches, he hasn't got a problem. But I would foresee his position with the way, certainly with the way the form is at this moment in time, very, very vulnerable.
I think that, like I say, every manager is vulnerable by the vagaries of results. Every manager's got to get results. What he's sort of been protected by at the moment. I mean, we've got to remember, Everton are still 13th this season based on performances on the pitch, but of course they have gone 10 games without a win in the Premier League over the quarter of a season. That's not a good run by any stretch of the imagination, given what he had before, all of that, and the wonders he's done, the relative wonders he's done. Really, I think it'd be a bit harsh for people to start sort of discussing his position. But I do concede it must be hard for the majority of fans. I mean, Joe and myself, like all those fans who get to travel and pay their hard-earned cash going up and down the country watching the Blues, they get to see the full picture. Whereas the Goodison form has been particularly dire this season. The fact they've only had 3 Premier League victories, so that's not a good look at all. Yeah, I think whenever a new owner comes in, I think any manager is always vulnerable to that idea that a new owner would want to bring in their new manager or sort of stamp their authority on things by bringing in their man, as it were. But I actually think that the way, like you say, as long as results are positive or deemed to be as positive as they can be in the circumstances, I think that Shawn Dyche's methods might actually be attractive to 777 in the terms that what he has done, certainly in his previous employers at Burnley, where he was there for almost a decade. He'd got decent results with on modest financial resources, probably the smallest market in the Premier League. What he was having to operate on a budget, sort of do well on a shoestring. So he sort of does fit the bill to the sort of manager that they would like in that respect. But I'm looking at the sort of appointments they've done at their other clubs, and they've been all over the place. And I think at Genoa they brought Shevchenko in right at the start, and then they quickly learnt when that one turned sour. So who's to know what's going through the minds of Josh Wander and company?
We've got an interesting couple of comments in the comment section, Chris. This is not really a question, but I just thought I'd let you know. So a couple of comments saying that the Echo don't cover Everton as much as Liverpool. What do you make of that? I think we send 2 reporters to every single home game. You go to the away games as much as you can, and we bring you articles every single day. We bring you nearly 1 podcast a day. We can only do what we can do. I think I think Dylan Blue, who else? Paul Hewitt says that, so referring to Liverpool, that's their favourite team. Well, I can assure you that Liverpool are not mine or Chris's favourite team. So yeah, just thought I'd bring that up. I didn't want to hide away from comments like that. I wanted to hit them head on that. We bring you as much Everton content as possible. Chris is the EFC writer. We've got Joe, who's the EFC writer as well, and they try and find out as much information as possible. I'm the multimedia editor for Royal Blue as well. So we try, like I say, we try to bring as much content as possible, and it is what it is. Any follow on from that, Chris?
Yeah, what I would say is probably that all media outlets, whether it's local or national, I think that there's going to be more Liverpool content being generated. That's just because of what Liverpool are doing, and whether we like that or not. But I say what we do is we cover Everton at every level of the club, and we cover them more extensively. The other major independent media outlets. So that would be where, as Ian's just said, the fact that all these Royal Blue podcasts, the home and away coverage from Joe and myself, and obviously the way that we focus on all elements of the club, both on and off the pitch, we cover the Blues more extensively than any other set of professional journalists.
Okay, last question before we go, and it comes from one of the watchers on Facebook, I think it was. Let me see. So, yeah, basically, Chris, I'll give my opinion, and then you can give your opinion. Lee Johnson on Facebook has just said, "What are your thoughts on 777, and do you think that the takeover will go ahead?" Go on. I'll let you go first, and then I'll follow on. Go on.
Yeah, I think I've got the same concerns that everyone has got, really, in that where is the money coming from? The record at the other teams that they've been at, like we've discussed extensively here, they've come into troubled teams, which Everton would also fall into that category. But it's not been a spectacular turnaround. They are new to it. I mean, I'd probably even go as far as saying to be concerned about any American owners really. But then there you go. If 777 gets the go ahead, you got half the Premier League owned by American owners. Just in the fact that, although even if they understand sports, they've got a very sort of different view on the way professional sports is done, because the fact that the way it is over in America, it's closed shop franchises, there's no promotion or relegation. It's a very different thing, and I think you saw that with the proposals for the European Super League, the breakaway there, and the way sort of American owners might have been enticed by the machinations of the Real Madrid people and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm sure I've got a lot of the concerns that the rest of you have got at the moment. What in terms of will it happen or not? My feeling is that it probably will happen, because it seems to me that obviously the Premier League have got a lot of concerns themselves, and they keep asking them. Maybe it's a case of that they've got these concerns. But there's no smoking gun. There's no sort of one thing which is deemed to be serious enough to actually prevent the whole thing coming through. But maybe there's a lot of lesser concerns or questions that they want answering. But yeah, it's obviously a very thorny issue. The fact it's gone on for so long, and you certainly don't want me to give any sort of definitive. I certainly won't be putting my mortgage on it either way. But if you're going to make me choose, is it going to go ahead or not? Given that we're so far down the line now, I'd say yes. But yeah, it's not great, is it?
Yeah, I'm starting to have major doubts now, because I did think, a couple of weeks back, couple of months back, that it would be an almost certainty that the deal would go through. But major doubts now that the deal will go through. I think I don't want to go as far as to say 777 are hiding information or not providing the information to the Premier League, but it does seem to be the case. So we will see. I mean, it's a positive, as we started off this podcast with, hopefully a positive that the Premier League and 777 are going to be sitting down at some point over, the end of this week or the beginning of next week. We know that it's not going to, nothing's going to be confirmed at that meeting, but you'd almost suspect that the Premier League want face-to-face talks, just to maybe even just to feel 777 out. All this information that should have been provided. Really, there should be a decision by now. I mean, how long can it go on? We know the United one went through fairly quick. We know it was a different deal. We know the Newcastle one took even longer, but there's no reason why this one is in the same ballpark as the Newcastle United one. So, we are, ready and waiting for a decision, and we'll obviously keep everyone posted to see what the decision is over the next couple of weeks, and let's hope we get one. Anything else to add, Chris? I know you've been by yourself today, writing a couple of articles. There was a Gary Lineker one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was a little bit critical of Everton's finishing, but probably rightly so.
Yeah, everyone have a look at that one. Basically, it's just looking about the numbers. We all know that Everton had a lot of shots against West Ham United, and they only one of them went in with the Beto header. So it's kind of looking at a deeper look at the actual numbers behind that and just how significant they are. Really, it's unfortunately it's not a feel good piece by any stretch of imagination, but it does kind of show you where Everton are at right now. And then I've got a piece coming up later, sticking with the American theme. Actually, it's Tim Howard's birthday today, so many happy returns to him, to Tim. And just kind of looking at his legacy at Everton, because I just think that he's perhaps a bit unfairly remembered in some respects compared to what he actually achieved for the club over the decade. So yeah, a couple of pieces, one that's up already and one that's on the way.
Good stuff. Well, we're going to be back on Friday. You're in Friday, Chris, is that right?
I'm off Friday, so that'll probably be Joe, that one.
All right, okay. Well, It will be most probably Joe, Thomas.
Yeah.
We might even get Gav Buckland back on the pod, and I'll see if anyone else wants to jump on, but if not, I'm more than happy to host. But obviously it will be the United preview. Before you go then, Chris, if you're not going to appear on the Friday pod, just a tiny little word on United and a little prediction, please.
Wow. Yeah. We're getting put on the spot today. I've about 777 and now this one. Yeah, the good thing is that Everton are actually, well, it's not a good thing, but I mean, good thing going into this fixture is that Everton have been better away from home this season. But the one thing we all know, unfortunately, is that they've not been good at Old Trafford for a very long time. Just one win there since the opening weekend of the entire Premier League in '92. Obviously, Brian Oviedo over a decade ago now. United are going into this on the back of tough run themselves. Erik ten Hag's under big pressure. Obviously, they went ahead against City last weekend and ended up getting well beaten in the Manchester derby. I think if everyone wants to get anything out of this, as much as we want to get that first Premier League win since the 16th of December, I think just any sort of positive result would be greatly welcomed there. So I don't know. Let's be positive, as positive as I can be, and say 0-0.
Okay, I'll take that. I think that's a positive result considering our form at Old Trafford over the past couple of years. Okay, well, that's all for today's show. Please show us your support. Please remember to hit the like button on the YouTube channel, and please subscribe to our Royal Blue YouTube channel. Please follow us on Facebook, which is Everton FC Liverpool Echo. And that's it for today's show. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Chris Beesley, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.